Hey folks, this is Jesse Cope, back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are, and whatever part of the day you're in. I appreciate y'all joining me and giving me a little bit of your time, and I will try and use it wisely today. And for those of y'all that continue to share the podcast and to help it grow, I'm incredibly grateful and humble. I have two puppy dogs sitting on the porch with me, and one kitty cat that is kind of insistent. And that's about it, other than the background noise. A few birds, I guess. So, we'll see what we can do. Got a little bit more rain, so grateful for that. And I think that's about it. We're going to talk today about Joseph's story. And we're going to read a couple excerpts out of his commentaries on the Constitution from chapter 44, talking about freedom of religion. And this is a pretty lengthy commentary, so we're just going to read a few sections of it. Story was a Supreme Court justice, if I didn't mention that already, and is considered one of the, well, this particular work of his is considered one of the most substantial, if not the most substantial, early commentaries on the American Constitution. And so, obviously, one would think that this man might know a little bit more about it and the intent than we do at this point. So, we'll get started. We'll see how far we can get. I just marked out a few sections, so maybe we can get through all of it. Indeed, the right of a society or government to interfere in matters of religion will hardly be contested by any person who believe that piety, religion, and morality are intimately connected with the well-being of the state and indispensable to the administration of civil justice. The promulgation of the great doctrines of religion, the being, the attributes, and providence of one Almighty God, the responsibility to Him for all our actions, founded upon moral freedom and accountability, a future state of rewards and punishments, the cultivation of all the personal, social, and benevolent virtues. These never can be a matter of indifference in any well-ordered community. It is indeed difficult to conceive how any civilized society can well exist without them, and at all events, it is impossible for those who believe in the truth of Christianity as a divine revelation to doubt that it is the special duty of government to foster and encourage it among all the citizens and subjects. This is a point wholly distinct from that of the right of private judgment in matters of religion, and of the freedom of public worship according to the dictates of one's conscience. So, a couple pretty good points here. The story is saying something much more eloquently than I do, although I say it pretty often on this podcast, folks, and that is, you don't have to be a Christian in order to be an American. But if you're going to be an American, you have to acknowledge that we're a Christian republic and follow those principles in public life. You know, he talks about the fact that in matters of religion, they're intimately connected with the well-being of the state and indispensable to the administration of civil justice. You've got to have these principles of Christianity in a country that wants to maintain freedom and liberty. The two have to be tied together. He talks about Almighty God and notes that it's impossible for those who believe in the truth of Christianity to doubt that it's the special duty of government to foster and encourage it among all the citizens and subjects. So as a Christian republic, which we were founded that way, we talk about that quite often, the government has a responsibility to encourage and foster Christianity among people following the principles of Christ. It doesn't have a duty to encourage or foster Islam or Judaism or atheism, infidelity, but it has a distinct responsibility to foster Christianity, the principles of Christ among its people. You talk about the sanctity of life, sanctity of marriage, caring for the widow and the orphan, the poor and the needy, and following the principles of Jesus Christ, which really he boiled down to two, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then the last line is really what I started off with. This is a point wholly distinct from that of the right of private judgment in matters of religion, and of the freedom of public worship according to the dictates of one's conscience. As long as the government's not coming in and telling you where you have to go worship, folks, or what you have to believe, there's no violation of the First Amendment. And that's what Justice Joseph Story was saying in his commentary, and this is what he was talking about for freedom of religion. The government has a responsibility to promote the principles of Jesus Christ in America. That has no bearing on them coming in and saying to an individual person, you have to believe this or that, or not believe this or that. And we've forgotten that today. We'll skip ahead a little bit. Let's see how much. Oh yeah, we're in good shape. Now, there will probably be found few persons in this or any other Christian country who would deliberately contend that it was unreasonable or unjust to foster and encourage the Christian religion generally as a matter of sound policy, as well as of revealed truth. In fact, every American colony, from its foundation down to the Revolution, with the exception of Rhode Island, if indeed that state be an exception, did openly, by the whole course of its laws and institutions, support and sustain in some form the Christian religion, and almost invariably gave a peculiar sanction to some of its fundamental doctrines. And this has continued to be the case in some of the states down to the present period without the slightest suspicion that it was against the principles of public law or Republican liberty. Indeed, in a republic, there would seem to be a peculiar propriety in viewing the Christian religion as the great basis on which it must rest for its support and permanence, if it be what it has ever been deemed by its truest friends to be, the religion of liberty. Montesquieu has remarked that the Christian religion is a stranger to mere despotic power. You know, and Jefferson said that too. He said that Christianity was, above all other religions, a friend to freedom and science and liberty. I forget exactly how he worded it. That's probably a poor paraphrase, but so what he's saying here is he's saying not only did our colonies up through the Revolution, all of them, without exception, perhaps Rhode Island, they sustained Christianity in some form or another, and it was a matter of sound policy, right? And they did this openly with laws and institutions, and they gave fundamental doctrines of the teachings of Christ, of Christianity, peculiar, special sanction. I mean, they promoted it above all others. This is a Christian country, or it was. It was founded that way, folks. And the left has managed over the last 80 years to twist it, to pretend that this was founded as some kind of maybe deistic, but more likely atheistic, secular society. And that's just simply not true. You can hear very clearly in Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story's commentary here that we were founded as a Christian nation, republic, and that the colonies, and even after the revolution, a number of the states kept Christianity in their laws, in their institutions, and promoted it above all others. And the problems have come really distinctly and easy to see, as we talk about frequently on this podcast, whether you're talking about um, broken families or you're talking about the promotion of sexually deviant lifestyles, LGBTQ lifestyles, you're talking about illegal immigration, the socialist communist policies, um, whether you're talking about just almost any number, the rejection of God out of our institutions, support for abortion, revisionist history, which we're talking about today. This is the history of our country, and then the left has taken it and twisted it, and we don't teach it anymore in our schools. We're not allowed to. Um, so, and then his last line in this little section, or one of his last lines, indeed, in a republic, there would seem to be peculiar propriety in viewing the Christian religion as the great basis on which it must rest for its support and permanence, if it be what it has ever been deemed by its truest friends to be, the religion of liberty. You know, New Testament verse, wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty, freedom. The simple fact, I thought this yesterday, and if you ever want to write a book, folks, or if you ever want to do a podcast or something, when you have a thought that comes in your head, wherever you are, at night before you go to bed, in the middle of the day, write it down somewhere, because I can't tell you how many times I've had something and I've thought, I'll remember that later, and I don't. But it was something along the lines, is the bottom line remains that we have two sets of citizens. We have a set of citizens that, although asleep at the moment still, and kind of lukewarm, recognize that the foundation of this country is based on the principles of Jesus Christ, or at least they're not hostile to it. They just don't think about it. And then we have another large segment of society that is, through either ignorance, trained that way or chosen that way, or malevolence, chooses to completely reject the fact of what Chief Justice, or not Chief Justice, but Justice Joseph Story just said here about the fact that in a republic, you have to have Christianity as the basis, the fundamental basis for the country if you're going to have any kind of permanence and security of foundation. And that goes directly against what the left promotes today across the board. And I think really, folks, this is why you see so many problems in education today. I shouldn't have said I think. I know this sounds arrogant and I apologize, but I don't think that, folks. I know it. There's a lot of people that want to talk about leftist doctrine, and I'm tired of the woke ideology being pushed on my kids. And that's true. What's the basis of that woke ideology? Where does it start and end? It starts and ends with rejection of God, and that's the bottom line. No matter what we do, no matter how we fix this, if we have a fight coming, if we don't, if we manage to back out of this at the ballot box somehow, the whole, everything goes back to whether we get back to this foundational basis for our republic, which is the teachings of Christ or not. Everything goes back to that. And if we acknowledge that, then maybe we have a chance to survive and our kids to grow up in a country of freedom and liberty, more so than we had even. And if we don't acknowledge that, then we continue down the path toward Mao and Stalin and Pol Pot and Hitler. I mean, it's that simple. It's not hard to see if you look at history at all. All right, let's see if we got time for one more. Maybe just a little part, we'll see. Yeah, I don't know, this is pretty lengthy. We may have to come back to this tomorrow or the next day. Maybe we'll do that. I'll go back up here and read this one more time just because, and we'll try and catch this next section over the next few days or at some point in the future. But when Justice Story was talking about the colonies, in fact, every American colony, from its foundation down to the Revolution, with the exception of Rhode Island, if indeed that state be an exception, did openly, by the whole course of its laws and institutions, support and sustain in some form the Christian religion, and almost invariably gave a peculiar sanction to some of its fundamental doctrines. And this has continued to be the case in some of the states down to the present period without the slightest suspicion that it was against the principles of public law or Republican liberty. Indeed, in a republic, I can't help but read this last line again, folks. There would seem to be a peculiar propriety in viewing the Christian religion as the great basis on which it must rest for its support and permanence. So when you hear, whether it's on MSNBC or CNN, or whether it's your neighbors or relatives or friends tell you that the First Amendment means that we can't favor Christianity above other religions as a government, or tells you that all religions are created equal, or tells you that this is a secular society based solely on the principles of Roman republicanism. It's not. It's not. They either, by choice or design, are ignorant of the truth of the matter. And you go back and you listen to somebody that was so much closer to the founding of our country and the passing of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and whose commentaries were used by probably every major law college for decades, if not century. That's who we need to listen to, folks. If we're going to have this republic, Christianity, the principles of Christ have to be the basis. And as Justice Story also said, that in no way infringes upon a person's personal right to choose what to believe in, who to believe in or not believe. I sure do appreciate y'all sitting with me. It's been a little time. I hope that y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless y'all. God bless your families. God bless America. We'll talk to y'all again real soon. Looking forward to it, folks.